I think the competition has been tough till the stage we've reached, but it's more of persistence, trying to get through, learning by each and every stage, and also interacting with other teams. So we're feeling very great. We hope to learn a lot from this experience, and hopefully we hope to persist and see whether we can reach the final or probably win the title as well.
We all know it's not an easy competition, so what are your expectations?
Our expectations first are to meet with all the team, to get to know about the competition even more, and hopefully win the competition at the end.
So what are you nervous about?
We think the other teams are very strong, and we're aware of the potential of every team to potentially win the competition. So we're just coming here with a positive mindset and trying to do our best for the next stages of the competition.
The Amango case, researched, designed and developed by the CharterQuest Institute, is based on a real-world multinational business within the global metal and mining industry. It simulates the strategic decisions its group CFO and board faced or potentially faces. The group is faced with the complex interplay of strategic threats, weaknesses and opportunities, some of which are embedded with serious ethical dilemmas, involving compelling individuals and powerful stakeholders that create a context for significant organizational change. The board has published a 3-year viability statement and turnaround strategy with emphasis on 4 policy objectives. 1. Restructure the portfolio. 2. Deleverage the balance sheet. 3. Drive operational discipline. And 4. Change dividend policy. 6 major issues have surfaced that require the group's attention, for which the board has asked the teams to prioritize, evaluate, and offer strategic advice. Managing divisional performance group-wide. A strategic performance measure relied upon to evaluate and reward executives appears to be creating some dysfunctional behaviors with unintended consequences. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply business studies as well as accounting. Strategic joint venture decision in Canada. A native Aboriginal group in Canada has been on rampage against mining companies, singling out Amango for exploiting mineral resources with too little benefit accruing to their clan. A number of mining companies, including Amango, are going into JV arrangements to mitigate this risk and undertake coal mining projects following resurgence in coal prices. There is need to decide on the best configuration for the mining infrastructure, amongst others. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply concepts relevant to economics as well as business studies. Strategic disposal in Brazil. Amango, as part of an ongoing asset restructuring program, has received a $1.5 billion offer to buy one of its subsidiaries in Brazil. The offer needs to be evaluated, taking into account its interconnection with the corporate reconstruction and reorganization issue. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply economics, accounting, as well as business studies, balance sheet deleverage or share repurchase. Amango's iron ore and coal disposal plans in South Africa has come under attack by the PIC, its single largest shareholder, who is threatening to dump its shares in the market if it proceeds with the disposal plan. In a separate development, the government is about to promulgate a new set of mining regulations that will impose a 10% royalty tax on the turnover of all mining companies and require them to surrender 26% of their ownership to historically disadvantaged persons as part of its Black Economic Empowerment (BEE) policies. The company is considering to rather sell part of its residential property portfolio to a BEE group and use the funds to meet specified objectives. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply accounting, economics, and business studies, operational risk, and industrial action in Australia. A controlled shutdown has been hurriedly effected in one of the group's mines in Australia, with 560 personnel evacuated due to safety concerns. 6 are reported dead, and 80 miners trapped in deep underground mines have been rescued. The incident has invited us notice to strike from the trade unions, and there is a protected strike that is already in motion. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply accounting and business studies, corporate reconstruction and reorganization. There is a fierce board debate over the strategic direction of the group, impacting on the decision as to which businesses to sell and which ones to keep. The CFO junior aspirants were required to apply accounting and business studies. Best wishes to the teams.
So hello everyone, my name is Cyril Michino.
I'm Albelaziz Benmehrez.
And I'm Amine Soufaih.
And we are Team Peacocks from the African Leadership Academy.
These are the problems we have with Amango on an international scale. We have a joint venture in Canada, strategic disposal in Brazil, balance sheet deleverage, corporate reconstruction and reorganization, managing divisional performance and operational risk in Australia.
But how are we prioritizing them? So we considered 2 factors. That's the urgency and the amount of losses you're getting from these issues. And we thought operational risk in Australia is really key. 7 days strategic disposal in Brazil, 7 days as well, followed by corporate reconstruction, balance sheet deleverage, all 1 year. Then the last will be strategic JV in Canada, managing divisional performance, which will only happen after all issues. Just special consideration on the first 2 where we have high losses of 250,000 in daily debt and where we have to respond to an offer.
Thank you, Cyril. Moving now to the SWOT analysis. Our strength is our worldwide recognition with 8 subsidiaries in over 45 countries. However, we struggle with a high debt of over $10 billion. Our credit ratings have been slashed to junk status, and we have negative operation profits in one of our subsidiaries. Our opportunities, however, are our strategic heterogeneity in the mining industry, which means that with 8 subsidiaries, you can sell 1 or 2, but you still remain in the business. Finally, our threats. PIC threatens to offload its shares from Amango, the negative public image in Australia, as well as the native protests in Canada.
Okay, so moving on to the discussion of issues, we'll discuss issues based on the urgency. That's the prioritization he had given it earlier forward.
So we have some positive aspects and negative aspects in this issue. The negative ones, the high debt and equity and the low PE ratio, and the positive ones are the high profit margin and the important offer from CMOC. So that is what we're planning to do. We're planning to respond to the CMOC offer with a counter offer at 2 billion and accept anything from 1.4 and 2. However, if that doesn't work, we have a plan B, which is to accept the offer and keep ownership of everything related to intellectual property, plant equipment, and materials. And this will highly reduce our debt, our main goal here. Why we're planning on selling MNP? Three main things: the low PE ratio, the low return on capital, and the second lowest profit of all subsidiaries. And we need to reduce this debt. Why? We believe that CMOC should align on this offer. We have a very growing profit margin from 18 to 21%, a high tenure forecast on Yobium, and a low PE ratio that could mean that this opportunity is undervalued.
Thank you. Moving now to operational risk and industrial action in Australia. Unfortunately, 6 miners have passed away and 8 miners have been trapped in a fatal accident in one of our mines. And we have $250,000 of daily financial losses. How can we face this? First of all, our first recommendation is to compensate the victims with that offer, which ranges between $300,000 to $400,000. That will lead to a positive publicity and they will decrease the risk of strikes. Moving now to what can we do financially. Cyril, thank you. So we will try to sell Copper Limited, which has a loss in operating profits. And also we've found out that Australia has many limitations from the high costs to the governmental regulations, and this will lead to debt reduction. This is just a table which shows the drop in operating profits for Copper Limited from 2015 to 2016.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to corporate reconstruction and reorganization. So what are the key considerations over here? One thing is maintenance of PIC as an investor who've threatened to back out of Amango, and the next thing is to reduce the company debt to below 10 billion. So what recommendations are we offering in this issue itself? So I'll talk about the second one first. We need to dispose assets that are not giving us much profit, but that will talk about under balance sheet deleverage. Our biggest recommendation here is to cease the planned sale of Copper Limited for 3 key reasons. First of all, the sale of Coal Limited might result in the loss of PIC as an investor. Coal has the highest sales of all minerals under Amango, and at the same time, Coal Limited has maintained its operational profits as they didn't drop. So over here we can see from 2015 to 2016, we've seen a drop in almost all minerals apart from Coal Limited in that aspect. And we can look at all other minerals, 97,660 million worth of coal sales, greater than any other mineral we are pushing through. But our biggest thing is this issue of PIC, which threatens to back out if because they care deeply about the socio-economic benefits of South Africa, and they are going to disinvest in any company that disinvests from the country. So why maintain PIC? One thing, they hold 15%. They're our largest investor, 15% of Amango. And at the same time, we have slashed credit ratings. That means it would be hard to find an investor in the case where PIC is not an investor anymore.
Now let's go on to balance sheet deleverage, in which we need to decrease this debt under 10 billion US dollars. Cyril, please. So we have 3 main steps to decrease this balance sheet, this debt: sell subsidiaries and assets, reduce liabilities and expenses, and shrink the number of employees. This is how we're going to proceed in terms of selling our subsidiaries. We chose Copper Limited, Nickel Limited, and Niobium Phosphates for those 3 reasons: dropping operating profit, negative profitability, and the opportunity of reducing this debt very quickly. In terms of employees, we're planning on decreasing the number of employees from 160,000 to 60,000 only. And we believe afterwards we're going to have finally an increase in operating profit that's going to be positive. This is the calculations that we've made. There's a little typo in terms of operating costs here. It should be 26, but we can see that the final operating profit is going to be very high afterwards. Finally, in terms of reducing the liabilities and expenses, we believe Amango has too much money dedicated to property, plant, and equipment. So we believe that we should sell 100% of the fixtures, 50% of the lands, building, and equipment to have a lower value of equipment and property, and afterwards lease back this to the company who will buy. And so a new source of finance for working capital afterwards.
Thank you, Albelaziz. Now we move to the strategic JV in Canada. There are 3 main points we have to tackle here: the Idle No More protest, the Quinta joint venture, and the mine designs. Let's move now to mine designs. Firstly, there are 3 mine designs: small, medium size, and large. we've calculated the profit of each mine design. We find that we have to choose the small one. Why? Because when we analyze the difference between the revenue and the total cost of each mine design, we find that the small and shallow would be the most profitable with $44 million. Moving on to how we will tackle the protests. First of all, recruit the native Canadians. This will lead to a job creation for natives, positive image, as well as calm down the protests. However, we will have to train and skilled native workers. For the representatives of the protests, we have to include them in the board, listen to their concerns, and share a decision at the end that would benefit both parties.
Moving on to the next one, that's the last one, in terms of prioritization, managing divisional performance group-wide. So Amango has been reviewing its bonus system, and in reaction to that bonus system, we've seen managers postponing their schedule, their standard service checks, retrenching workers from mines that are economically viable, at the same time not recording financial material. Now, our recommendation, key recommendations here. First of all, switch to a performance-based bonus system from the profit one, which is giving us so much losses. Establish a progressive discipline policy, and at the same time implement a monitoring software for employees to avoid cases as we've seen by the managers. So in terms of the performance-based bonus system, we'll have annual bonuses, quality increase bonuses, and sustained quality increase. We are moving to a performance-based because it gives you motivation, and at the same time you don't have so much losses, giving people who are not motivated enough to push by your increased turnovers. Now onto progressive discipline policy, we've seen the kind of things managers are doing, but you want to avoid such misconduct. So create a policy, and these are metrics showing how having a code of conduct can increase the potential and actually impact on your country, on your company. Now the last thing is the monitoring software, which will monitor security, productivity, risk, and litigation. But one key thing about the software is we need to make it overt. That means each and every employee needs to know we are using the software. But at the main time, it helps us monitor and makes us adhere to our code of conduct, which he had stipulated.
So summarizing the ethical issues that we have in Australia, we need to financially compensate the workers and the victims after the mine collapse. Also, we need to take in consideration the idle no more representatives and include them in our board of representatives. And finally, in terms of managing divisional performance, we need this monitoring system to be overt. Employees will know that their work is tracked.
Okay, now, ethics introduction of workforce. As we've seen, we have to reduce our workforce in some areas. And the first thing is we need to develop a workforce action plan that looks at 5 key things. That's rationale, objectives, implementation process, timeline, and impact assessment techniques. Definitely, we need to notify them 3 months in advance because it's just pure ethics on that. And at the same time, we need to keep paying our employees for 3 months even after their departure, just as they're looking for another job. But a key thing we need to look at is the outplacement assistance for anyone we're letting off, just in terms of the ethics we need to adhere to.
So as a summary, these are the 6 decisions we made at the end. First issue, we have to compensate the victims and sell Copper Limited. In Brazil, we have to counter CMOC's offer and sell AMA&P. Thirdly, we have to maintain Coal Limited and sell AMA&P, Nobium, and Copper. Fourthly, we have to sell subsidiaries and reduce the workforce liabilities. In the JV in Canada, we have to choose the small and shallow design and collaborate with idle no more representatives. And finally, we have to introduce a performance-based bonus system and a discipline policy. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Team Peacocks, you soared like eagles today. Very, very good presentation. Well done. Just on this slide, actually, I'd just like you to convince us as the board what the priority list should be. So you've touched on all the issues, but can you just prioritize? Is that your priority list, or is it different to what's up there from 1 to 6, please?
Actually, how we're tackling the issues were based on our prioritization, which we had discussed earlier. This is the order of how we should go ahead with such issues. Now, our thought was Australia should definitely come first because you're losing 250,000 US dollars daily. That's massive losses, and we need to tackle that as soon as possible. How we can promote the public image and prevent such losses. And at the same time, in Brazil, very, very key to be tackled in 7 days because you have an offer on the table. You have to respond to the offer, and you think that should come right after the Australian issue. Prevent the losses, look at the offer on the table and see how you can go ahead. Now, when you get to the 3 and 4, for balance sheet, particularly in corporate reconstruction, these are things that are going on ahead, and our recommendation there was just to cease the planned sale. So it won't take so much time in just stopping any kind of sale that's there. But balance sheet is something that needs to be done in less than a year because that's the goal for Mango in 2017, to reduce the debt to below 10 billion. So whatever you're doing here needs to be done in a year. Then strategic JV in Canada is very, very key because you need to look at your future profits. So you need to decide what mine design you're going for, just calm down the protest and all that stuff. That should come after reduction of debt because you're investing again. But lastly, which is our least important issue, will be managing divisional performance because our thought is the gravity of these issues just stipulate that we need to look at them first before we get to that divisional performance issue, which is just small stuff such as implementing software and creating a code of conduct.
Got it. Thanks very much, team Peacocks, and very well-structured presentation. Very impressive. I'm just wondering, as a board member, what action, if any, do we need to take on the CEO? Just in terms of that falsifying records and wanting to immediately start production in Australia and ignoring almost the reporting of the deaths in that.
So just about the CEO, just you can. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily an issue. Just
I think. Considering the CEO, we've seen that there are many losses in terms of Amango in all subsidiaries. So CEO definitely, it might be a consideration to change him and maybe impeach someone new because of the important losses. So sometimes you need to be very decisional on your decisions. You can join the board and take a very important decision concerning the future.
Okay, but at the same time, I thought is give the person, definitely changing a CEO should be an option, but at the same time, you need to give them time before you actually change the CEO. We're seeing the issues that are here, issues that you can go for consulting and see ways of solving them. And our thought is if things are not changing after a couple of months, then we definitely need to change the CEO. But our thought is such recommendations will not really lead to such stuff, but changing the CEO is something that should be done in case these things persist.
Okay. Yes, I think I've got to echo everyone's sentiments. Well done. And I think just to give you a sense, when you did start, someone asked, is this the junior case study? So well done on your presentation. In terms of the question I have, it's quite interesting your approach to ethical issues as well as the people component. So from a board's perspective, in addressing the PIC's concern, you talked about socioeconomic factors, but then you recommend going from 160,000 to 60,000. Although you're compensating Australia, you're shutting down a permanent workforce. How do you propose we manage the different messages to our different markets where we either shut down or stay open based on what seems like actually profitability and not a people concern?
That's such a nice question. So I thought, first of all, on the ethics side, we need to reduce the number of workers you have basically because of the amount of losses you're going through. Remember, high debt and equity means after some time with such sustained debt, you'll end up closing down a company and people will lose their jobs at the end of the day. But it's always nice to look at the future of your business because it's still providing employment to people at the same time. Now, getting to what PIC said about their interest in socioeconomic factors, that's the view of PIC. For us, we understand ethics is very, very key. And our thought is we need to maintain an investor who will definitely sustain our business moving forward. But as we are taking off some workers, our thought is we give a thought to the kind of things we need to do in terms of maintenance of these workers and such outplacement programs, making sure that they are. We also suggested redeployment in the document we created, and at the same time, still paying them salaries that they're looking for other jobs and all that stuff. So we do care about the workers. It's just a core belief in terms of our ethics.
Tim Peacocks, tell me, when you came to the justification of the workforce reduction from 160 to 60 people, did you take into consideration the cost of restructuring? And does the profitability after restructuring include that? And second question, with regard to the mine design justification, you have actually looked at the most profitable option. However, have you considered the non-quantitative factors regarding that decision?
If we can start with employees here, we saw that the operating costs of Amango in terms of the employees were very high. So 13,000 million of US dollars were dedicated only to employees. Afterwards, we're going to 60,000. We're going to have only 4,900 million dedicated to employees. Of course, this implies these are only the direct costs, but costs of reconstructions are considered in fact. This might go a bit up in some employees who will take more tasks and who will get more bonuses afterwards because they'll do tasks that some other employees did in the past. Now, in terms of the second question was about the profitability of the mine design, right?
Yes. So the key components we considered when choosing the mine designs are how much the amount of coal in each mine, as well as what the cost of production of that amount of coal. So we've gone through that process. We've got the total cost for each mine design, also the revenue at the end. When selling that specific amount of coal, how much at the end would it be profitable? So we find the small and shallow would be the most profitable.
Just to answer the question on the qualitative aspect, probably I don't think the quality is affected by any of these things, but I think you're asking about other factors other than just cost in this case. And our thought was that having native protests was going to affect the mine in any way, whether it's large, small, or medium. So our thought was, if that is going to affect us in any way, how can you address it, but at the same time go for the most profitable mine, in this case, which was the small and shallow?
I would like you to give a comment on something that I didn't hear about how you plan to deal with the issues raised by the Chamber of Mines. The Chamber of Mines is looking at changing the mining charter, and it's one of the key issues that have got to be dealt with. How do you plan to deal with that?
So for the Australian issue, what we considered is selling copper limited. And we said that that's our main recommendation in terms of financials. Why? Because we're losing almost $250,000 per day. But what we also thought is that maybe we won't have potential buyers. And that's why we're also considering if there is no potential buyer, then we're also considering selling our assets and shut down the mine at the end.